Imagine you're painting a room, you've got your brush, a bucket of eggshell white, and your goal is to cover every single square inch of the floor.
Oh, that sounds like a stressful weekend.
Right. But there's just one, like, completely unavoidable issue. To paint the floor, you physically have to stand on it.
Right, yeah.
You are the painter, but you're also taking up physical space inside the painting. And no matter how perfectly you plan your route, or, how small you try to make yourself, you are always going to leave two footprints completely untouched.
Yeah, and that footprint problem, it isn't just a frustrating home improvement issue. It actually represents a literal, mathematically proven law of our reality.
Wow.
Yeah, you cannot perfectly model or observe or paint a world from inside that very same world. To capture the whole picture, you'd have to step outside the frame.
And today, we're taking that exact reality, that inherent, inescapable incompleteness, and we're looking at it through a genuinely fascinating stack of source materials.
Yeah, these papers are wild.
They really are. They were written in 2026 by Joshua Aaron Terziu and his family, based down in Carlis, Louisiana, and they've built this comprehensive framework called CEASM, which stands for Coherence Entropy Area Signal Matter.
Right. And it's a framework that keeps evolving, much like its subject matter, actually. In earlier drafts, the acronym stood for Cognitive Engineering Altruistic Self-Mastery.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and that shifting terminology reflects the core thesis of their work, which is how systems, whether they are microscopic particles or, human beings, continuously adapt and become what they are.
And we're going to dive into how this framework takes incredibly dense cosmic scale theory things like quantum information, black hole thermodynamics, optical physics, and translates it into a highly practical operating manual for your everyday life.
It's incredibly grounded.
Yeah, we'll explore how you can manage uncertainty, redefine what failure actually means, and find genuine stability using concepts that range from, well, Cajun cooking to the internal lattice of crystals. Okay, let's unpack this.
So to truly grasp what these papers are doing, we really have to examine Wolpert's physical limits of inference.
Okay, Wolpert's limits.
Right, this is the scientific bedrock of your footprint analogy from earlier. David Wolpert demonstrated that any computational device, so whether that's a supercomputer, a human brain, or even a whole society operating inside the universe it is trying to predict, will inevitably fail at some prediction or observation.
Because it's standing on the floor, it's trying to paint.
Exactly. The mechanism is really simple. To model a system perfectly, your modeling device must possess more memory states than the system itself.
Right, which is impossible if you're inside it.
Exactly right. Therefore, a brain cannot contain a perfect, complete model of the universe it sits inside. You simply do not possess the capacity to know everything.
Which, that fundamentally changes how we view our own blind spots, right? Because normally we treat not knowing something as a personal defect. You miss a detail in a project at work, or you misjudge a friend's reaction, and the immediate thought is like, I'm flawed. I should have seen this coming.
Yeah, we carry so much guilt over that. But the CESM framework flips that interpretation entirely. What's fascinating here is, what if the reason you cannot foresee every outcome isn't a design flaw in your brain, but the actual design specification of reality?
Wait, really? Like, we're supposed to be flawed?
Think about it physically. If you knew everything, if every variable was perfectly predicted and locked in, you would be a finished, frozen system.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, nothing new could ever occur. Not knowing everything, your personal limitation, is a necessary computational boundary. That boundary is the friction forcing you to learn, to adapt, to interact.
So incompleteness is the only reason anything in the universe happens at all.
Precisely.
I love framing personal growth as a scientific research project like that. It just takes the emotional sting out of failure. Your mistakes aren't character flaws, they're just unavoidable data points for learning.
Yeah, it completely neutralizes the shame.
Which leads right into a concept the papers call computational irreducibility. This is the idea that some processes in life have absolutely no shortcuts. You can't just, read the summary. You have to run the program step by step. And the Terzi family illustrates this using a very Louisiana example.
Yes, the Cajun roux.
Making a roux.
It serves as a brilliant physical demonstration of this physics concept. If you want to make a proper roux, you need a cast iron pan, oil, flour, and a wooden spoon, and you just have to stand at the stove.
You just have to be there.
Right. There's no mathematical algorithm or life hack that can skip the physical time it takes for those molecules to bond and brown.
But let's look at that practically, right? Because the sources say you have to stand there for sometimes 45 minutes continuously stirring this mixture.
Oh yeah, it's a commitment.
In a world where I am expected to reply to a Slack message in like 45 seconds,
Hmm.
how does that actually survive contact with reality? Our entire modern culture is obsessed with speed. We want the 5-minute summary, the 3-step hack to fix a relationship. So aren't those shortcuts just working against physics?
They absolutely are. The physics of the roux explains exactly why those modern shortcuts often fail structurally. I mean, if you try to bypass the time requirement by cranking the burner to high heat,
Like trying to microwave a roux.
right, microwaving it, hoping to force the reaction to happen faster, the mixture just burns. The chemical bonds shatter, and you are left with an irreversible black mess. The papers refer to this as a discrete self-similar or DSS state.
The DSS state. Oh, yeah.
And in human terms, that is complete burnout. The system becomes rigid and just collapses under forced heat.
Okay, so forcing the timeline guarantees burnout, but you also can't just like leave it on low heat and walk away, right?
No, because if you are too timid and keep the heat too low, the molecules never gain enough energy to bond in the first place. You end up with a pale, scattered soup that never forms a cohesive structure.
So you get soup instead of a base.
Exactly. That scattered state is just as useless as the burned state. The structural integrity only happens in the middle, through that computationally irreducible process of standing there, continuously applying the patient figure-8 motion of the spoon.
But if burning the roux is rigidity and pale soup is chaos, how do we physically stay in the middle? Because that middle ground feels incredibly precarious.
Well, the paper suggests it isn't a static, peaceful place at all. It's an active, continuous tug-of-war that they call the self-sustaining horizon, or SSH.
SSH.
Right. At the stove, that horizon is the exact point where the gain of heat perfectly balances the loss of moisture. In psychological or social terms, the SSH is the balance between exploitation and exploration.
Exploitation and exploration.
Right, so exploitation is the gravitational pull toward safety, toward minimizing surprise and sticking to one predictable story.
Oh, like staying in a career you've outgrown just because it pays the bills. Like it's safe, but it's rigid.
Exactly. Exploration, on the other hand, is the pull toward maximum possibility, keeping every single door open, which, eventually leads to scattered chaos. To stay on the horizon, those two immense forces must perfectly cancel each other out.
It makes me think of a surfer riding a massive wave.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Yeah, you have the chaotic, explosive power of the ocean pushing you forward, that's exploration, and you have gravity pulling you down toward the safety of the ocean floor, which is exploitation.
Right.
And if you lean your weight just right on the board, those forces cancel each other out. You aren't standing still, obviously, you're moving incredibly fast, but internally, relative to the board, you have found a pocket of perfect balance. You're riding the horizon.
The visualization captures the dynamic perfectly. However, the CEASM framework makes a pretty bold claim about maintaining that balance over time. A system cannot sustain that horizon entirely on its own for very long.
Wait, why not?
Because two interacting forces, or even two interacting people, are never enough to maintain stability. And this introduces the fundamental concept of triadic closure.
Triadic closure. Let's break that down, because while it sounds like, I don't know, abstract geometry, the papers use it to explain our everyday social dynamics.
Yeah, we have to look at quantum information first to understand the mechanism here. When pairs of particles become entangled, forming a dyad, they lock together in a way where their states depend on each other.
Right, they're linked.
But if you isolate them and look at either particle individually, the data just looks like random noise. Together, they hold perfectly encrypted information. The structural problem is that this encrypted meaning is incredibly fragile. To decrypt it, to make that meaning durable so it doesn't just evaporate back into noise, you need a third element. You require a witness.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the papers map this quantum behavior directly onto human relationships.
They do, yeah.
Let's say two people are in a deeply intense argument. They form a closed dyad. They are encrypting all this intense meaning, all their shared history and frustration, but because they are stuck in that closed loop, they can't decrypt it.
Right, they just spin in circles.
Exactly. They can't resolve it. They need a third element to break the loop and ground the reality of what's happening.
And that third element could be a couples therapist sitting in the room. By simply observing, the therapist changes the state of the dyad. But the witness doesn't even have to be a person.
Right.
It could be a shared child they both love and are trying to protect. It could be an institution, like a marriage vow they both refer back to, or even just a shared notebook where they write down their grievances.
Hmm.
The third point of the triangle acts as the anchor stabilizing the two.
I mean, it's the physics of an inside joke.
Oh, yes.
Think about it. You and your best friend have a ridiculous inside joke. Between the two of you, it's encrypted noise. You just say, "Let it blue penguin," and it means absolutely nothing to the outside world. The joke only gets its full power. It only truly becomes real when a third person walks into the room, hears you say it, and looks totally confused. Their confusion, their presence as the witness, decrypts the dynamic and makes your shared reality durable.
This is exactly it. And this physical law scales to nearly every stable system we know. Two fighters in a ring will devolve into pure, unstructured violence unless there is a referee and a set of rules acting as the third witness.
Oh, sure.
A teacher and a student require a shared curriculum to stabilize their interaction. The universe operates on this principle. Signal alone is empty, noise alone is empty, and a pair requires a witness to keep the meaning from vanishing into the void.
Let's be realistic about this, though. Staying on that perfect surfer's horizon, constantly balancing our forces with perfectly aligned triadic witnesses, that is impossible to do 24/7.
Oh, absolutely impossible.
Life hits you. We inevitably fall off the board, we get stressed, we lose our temper, we burn out. What happens when the system fails?
Well, this is where the framework introduces the physical mechanism of the micro-reset. To explain how to recover from falling off the horizon, the papers turn to the behavior of a very specific material, which is potassium tantalum niobate, laced with a little bit of lithium. It's often abbreviated as KT and Li.
The crystal that weaves itself.
Yes. The addition of lithium to this crystal's lattice creates a really unique physical property. When the crystal is warm, its internal structure is highly symmetrical and undecided. It's floating in potential.
Okay, floating in potential.
But as the ambient temperature drops below a certain critical threshold, the atoms have to settle. They must pick a definitive structure. If you drop the temperature rapidly, if you quench the crystal in a panic, like plunging it into freezing water, the internal domains don't have time to communicate.
You just freeze.
Right. They freeze into an irregular, brittle, shattered mess of conflicting shapes.
Which is the psychological equivalent of slamming your laptop shut and screaming into a pillow because the stress hit you all at once.
Exactly. The system becomes rigid and fragile. However, if you cool that exact same KT and Li crystal incredibly slowly, and we're talking at a rate of less than 0.4 degrees Celsius per minute, the physics completely change.
Wow.
Yeah, the slow removal of heat gives the lithium ions time to migrate. The internal domains don't just randomly stack, they weave over and under each other. They form a resilient, basket-like fabric at the microscopic level. The crystal uses the slow transition to weave a structure capable of withstanding immense stress without shattering.
So the goal is to figure out how to slow cool our own brains. When we fall off the horizon, how do we weave a basket instead of shattering? Because I know the papers actually pull a practical daily routine out of this.
They do, yeah. The foundation of the routine requires you to physically signal safety to your nervous system. You have to cool slowly. The framework suggests dedicating 10 minutes to this reset. The physiological mechanism involves dropping your breathing rate to about 6 breaths a minute and introducing a physical rocking motion at a 2 to 3 hertz tempo.
2 to 3 hertz, which is the exact frequency of a rocking chair or the gentle sway of a boat, or, how you rock an infant to sleep.
Right.
By doing that, you're bypassing your conscious thoughts and speaking directly to your vestibular system, telling it, we are not being actively chased by a predator.
Exactly. And by dropping out of that high alert panic, you allow the links in your mind to randomize. You stop forcing yesterday's rigid solutions onto today's novel problem.
Yeah.
You have to let the internal structure loosen up before it can reweave.
And then what?
From there, you narrow your focus. You pick a 20 by 20 micron region.
Meaning you don't try to solve your entire life crisis in 10 minutes. You pick one tiny jammed drawer in your kitchen, or you pick one specific email to reply to.
Yes. And the way you approach that small area is crucial, which brings us back to the optical physics of the KT and Li crystal. If researchers shine a harsh infrared laser onto the crystal to observe its weave, nothing productive happens. The high heat of the infrared light just bounces off the rigid structure. But if they shine a gentle green laser onto a small localized spot, a specific mechanism occurs.
What happens?
The green light actually kicks out trapped electrical charges within the lattice. The overall electrostatic cost of the system drops and the internal fabric relaxes.
See, translating that to human psychology is so powerful because harsh infrared light is when we aggressively interrogate ourselves.
Yeah.
We demand answers like, why am I like this? Why can't I just focus on my work?
Right, we just beat ourselves up.
Yeah, and we think that intense self-scrutiny is doing the work, but we are just blasting our own mental structure with massive amounts of heat. The structure stays rigid and defensive, but gentle green light is warm, non-judgmental attention. It's observing that jammed drawer or that feeling of anxiety without needing to punish yourself for it.
And that gentle attention physically lowers the electrostatic cost, the emotional charge of your anxiety. It allows the trapped tension to dissipate naturally. Once that charge drops, you simply observe what remains stable. You don't force an outcome, you let the future select which parts of your structure remain durable after the panic is gone.
I mean, viewing daily life challenges as data points for learning adaptive resonance takes serious intention because every notification on your phone is basically a forced quench, right?
Oh,
It's a
absolutely.
ping demanding you snap into a rigid immediate response. We have to actively build in the buffer for these micro resets, or the modern world will just keep shattering our crystal.
The world will constantly apply heat, yes. You don't have to overhaul your entire personality to survive it, though. You simply have to manage the rate of change of your own state. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this isn't just a strategy for individual nervous systems. It dictates how entire communities act as horizons for each other.
Oh, right, let's scale this up. Because the Terns-U papers take this physics and apply it to Akkadian history. They focus on the Akkadians living around the Bay of Fundy between 1604 and 1713.
It is a phenomenal historical example of what the papers call communal sensing.
Communal sensing.
Yeah, the Akkadians lived in a highly volatile environment caught between empires and extreme tides. They didn't survive by relying on a rigid top-down authority dictating every move. I mean, a rigid hierarchy is essentially a burned roux or a quenched, shattered crystal.
Right.
Instead, they survived through a distributed mechanism of shared adaptation.
They literally built the landscape to force cooperation. They laid out these long river lots so that every single family owned a slice of the marsh, a slice of the upland, and a slice of the water.
Yes.
They distributed the environmental feedback equally across the entire community.
They also used their social structures to regulate the community's temperature. They utilized parish assemblies to jointly decide when to build or repair the dikes holding back the ocean. But more importantly, they scheduled structured feasts. The papers refer to these feasts as deliberate entropy cycles.
Because when a community faces extreme pressure, the natural human instinct is to isolate, right? To hoard your resources, lock your doors, and become rigid.
Exactly. But the structured feasts mechanically forced the community to randomize their links. It compelled families to mix, to share information, and to drop the collective electrostatic charge of their daily survival stress.
So they were basically executing a communal slow cool.
Exactly right. By interacting constantly, they allowed the community's structure to weave itself into a resilient fabric.
And the papers draw a direct line between the 17th century community efficiency and modern bold fMRI brain scans.
Yeah, it is a striking parallel. For a long time, neuroscience operated on the assumption that a brighter signal on an fMRI meant more brain activity.
Because it lights up, right?
Right, because a bright signal indicates a massive flood of fresh blood to that specific area. The logic was just, more blood equals more cognitive work.
The brute force urban planning approach to biology. If there's heavy traffic, just pave a 12-lane highway right through the middle of the city.
Exactly. But recent research into brain metabolism shows that's fundamentally incomplete. Researchers found that sometimes patches of the cortex look completely dim on the scanner, but they're actually performing highly complex cognitive work.
Wait, really? How?
They aren't inactive, they're just utilizing a mechanism called the oxygen extraction fraction.
It's absolute efficiency. It's like instead of everyone driving their own individual car to a community potluck, which makes the parking lot look incredibly bright, busy, and chaotic on satellite imagery, everyone just carpools in a minibus.
That's a great way to put it.
The aerial photo of the parking lot looks dim and quiet, but the exact same amount of cooking and interacting is happening inside the building.
Yeah, and that mechanism defines true resilience, whether we are talking about a neural network in your skull or a community navigating hardship. A community that shares resources, intermarries, and maintains its cultural cohesion in the kitchen when outside forces try to suppress it, as the Akkadians did, is operating exactly like that highly efficient, dim cortex.
Wow.
It extracts the maximum value from the resources already present locally without requiring a massive energy-burning performance.
So what does this all mean for you, the person listening to this deep dive right now? It means that true resilience doesn't mean you never get tired. It doesn't mean you need to constantly widen your mental interstate to handle more and more stress traffic.
No, not at all.
It means learning to carpool your resources. It means looking at the messy, conflicting interactions in your daily life not as threats, but as vital boundary noise. That noise isn't an error, it's the friction that helps your entire community navigate together.
The noise is the raw material for the encryption. You require the people around you, even the deeply frustrating ones, to serve as the witnesses and the counterweights that keep your reality durable. Without them, you are just an isolated system drifting into noise.
We've covered a massive amount of ground today. We started by establishing that you are not flawed just because you are incomplete. Your incompleteness is the literal engine of your life.
And by acting patiently, like standing at the stove stirring the roux, you respect the physics of your own growth and avoid burning your potential into a rigid state.
Right. And by finding a third witness, you make the meaning in your life durable. By practicing the gentle green light of slow cooling, you weave a resilient basket out of your stress instead of shattering. And by relying on communal sensing, you can optimize your existence without burning out your own engine.
And, you know, if we look at where all of this is heading, it raises an entirely new question I want you to consider.
Okay, lay it on us.
We established that the universe demands a third witness, a therapist, a shared notebook, a friend, to make the meaning between two people real and durable. But today, we are increasingly outsourcing that role of the witness to artificial intelligence and algorithms. We vent to chatbots, algorithms mediate our arguments online.
Wow, that is a wild shift in the dynamic.
Think about the dyads in your own life right now. Who or what is acting as your witness? And if we replace human witnesses with algorithms designed to constantly validate our existing viewpoints, are we actually maintaining our self-sustaining horizon? Or are we just slowly turning up the heat on the roux, entirely unaware that we are about to burn the system?
That is something to think about. We want to thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the CESM framework. Take this cosmic operating manual with you into your week. Be gentle with your own boundaries. And remember, you have to let the crystal weave. We'll see you next time.